February 4th, 1983, Downey, California, 9:51 a.m. In her childhood bedroom at her parents' house, 32-year-old Karen Carpenter collapsed from heart failure caused by years of anorexia nervosa. Paramedics rushed her to Downey Community Hospital, but she was pronounced dead at 10:15 a.m. She weighed only 77 pounds. The world mourned the loss of one of the most distinctive voices in popular music, the angelic sound behind hits that defined the 1970s. But what the public didn't know was that 3 months earlier, Karen had begun keeping a diary, a brutally honest account of the pressures that drove her eating disorder and the people who encouraged it, profited from it, and ultimately let her die, rather than risk her career. That diary, discovered by her brother Richard in 2008, while sorting through family archives, and partially excerpted in Randy Schmidt's 2010 biography Little Girl Blue, reveals a truth the music industry spent decades hiding. Karen Carpenter didn't just suffer from anorexia. She was systematically encouraged to maintain an unhealthy weight by managers, producers, and record executives who valued her appearance over her health. And when she finally sought treatment, the industry sabotaged her recovery, because a healthy Karen Carpenter might mean a less controllable, less profitable Karen Carpenter. This is not a story about a talented woman who struggled with body image issues. This is a story about an industry that weaponized those struggles, that chose profits over a human life, and that killed Karen Carpenter as surely as if they had poisoned her themselves. This is the testimony she left behind about the people who valued her voice, but not the person behind it. To understand the pressure that killed Karen Carpenter, you must first understand the perfectionism that made her a star. Born on March 2, 1950, in New Haven, Connecticut, Karen grew up in a middle-class family where achievement was expected and mediocrity was unacceptable. Her mother, Agnes, was controlling and critical, constantly comparing Karen unfavorably to her musically gifted brother, Richard. Karen learned early that love was conditional. You earned it through performance, through being better, through never being good enough to stop trying. Music became Karen's way to prove herself. She was a natural drummer with impeccable timing, but her real gift was her voice, a contralto so pure and emotionally direct that it could break your heart with a single phrase. When she and Richard formed the Carpenters in 1969 and signed with A&M Records, Karen was just 19 years old, eager to succeed, willing to do whatever it took to make the partnership work. And succeed they did. Between 1970 and 1976, the Carpenters released a string of hits that dominated adult contemporary radio. Songs became defining sounds of an era, wholesome, beautifully crafted, emotionally resonant. They sold over 90 million records worldwide. They won 3 Grammy Awards. They were America's musical sweethearts. But behind the wholesome image, Karen was drowning under pressure that came from every direction. Richard demanded perfect performances, doing take after take until Karen's voice was raw. Their mother, Agnes, criticized Karen's appearance constantly, suggesting she was too heavy, too plain, not feminine enough. And the record label, seeing massive profits in the Carpenters' success, pushed them to maintain a grueling schedule, recording, touring, television appearances, that left no time for rest or recovery. "I am so tired," Karen wrote in one of her earliest diary entries from late 1982. "Tired of singing, tired of performing, tired of being Karen from the Carpenters instead of just Karen, but mostly tired of everyone having an opinion about my body while pretending they care about my health. Stop here. What comes next changes everything." The weight comments that became a death sentence. 1973-1980. Karen Carpenter's anorexia didn't develop in isolation. According to her diary and testimony from friends, it began with a single comment from a music critic in 1973 who described her as Richard's chubby sister. Karen, who had always been self-conscious about her appearance, was devastated. She weighed about 145 pounds at 5'4", completely normal and healthy. But the comment triggered something in her perfectionist mind. If critics noticed her weight, then her weight must be a problem. What should have been a minor incident was amplified by the people around her. Instead of reassuring Karen that she looked fine, her mother Agnes agreed that Karen could stand to lose a few pounds. Their manager at A&M Records suggested that television appearances would be more successful if Karen looked camera-ready. Even Richard, focused entirely on the music, made casual comments about Karen's appearance that landed like daggers. "They made it seem like my weight was holding us back," Karen wrote in her diary. "Like I was the weak link. Like if I just lost 20 pounds, we'd be perfect. So I started dieting, and everyone praised me, told me I looked better, told me to keep going. And I did." By 1975, Karen's weight had dropped to around 120 pounds. She looked thin, but not alarmingly so. The praise continued. Magazine profiles commented on her new slender figure. Photographers preferred the sharper angles of her face. Record executives at A&M noted approvingly that she photographed better. Every positive comment reinforced the behavior. Every compliment was fuel for the disorder. But Karen couldn't stop. The anorexia, once triggered, took on a life of its own. By 1976, she weighed 105 pounds. By 1978, she was under 90 pounds. Her clothes hung on her frame. Her face became gaunt. Her energy declined. But the professional pressure to maintain her schedule never eased. If anything, it intensified as record sales began to decline, and the label pushed for more output to recapture their earlier success. "I'm disappearing," Karen wrote in 1979. "Literally disappearing. And nobody seems to notice or care as long as I can still sing. They book studio time and concerts and TV appearances, and I show up weighing 80 pounds, and they just ask if I can hit the high notes. My body is dying, and all they care about is the product." This is where the official biographies quietly skip forward: the failed intervention and the industry's betrayal. 1981-1982. By 1981, Karen Carpenter's anorexia was impossible to ignore. She weighed less than 80 pounds. Her hair was falling out. She was weak, frequently dizzy, unable to perform at her usual level. Friends and family finally confronted her, insisting she needed professional help. Karen, who had been denying the severity of her condition for years, finally agreed to seek treatment. In 1982, she entered therapy with psychotherapist Stephen Levenkron in New York, one of the few specialists treating eating disorders at that time. For the first time in nearly a decade, Karen wasn't working. She was focusing on recovery, trying to understand the psychological roots of her disorder, attempting to rebuild a relationship with food and her body. But according to her diary, the music industry actively undermined her recovery. A&M Records executives called repeatedly, asking when she'd be ready to record again. They sent contracts for television appearances, suggesting she could do them when she felt better. Her manager pressured her to cut the therapy short, arguing that she was losing momentum in her career and that fans were forgetting about the Carpenters. "They want me back before I'm ready," Karen wrote in August 1982. Steve Deritz, Levenkron, says I need at least a year of intensive therapy, maybe 2, but the label says we can't wait that long. They're worried about money, about losing our audience. They actually suggested I could do therapy part-time while resuming a lighter schedule, like you can recover from a deadly eating disorder on weekends. The pressure wore Karen down. Despite Levenkron's warnings, she left New York in November 1982 and returned to California. She told herself she could continue therapy on an outpatient basis while gradually resuming work. But the moment she returned home, the demands intensified. Richard wanted to start recording a new album. The label was planning a comeback tour. Karen's mother was critical of the weight Karen had gained in therapy, suggesting she looked too heavy again. "I gained 12 pounds in New York," Karen wrote in one of her final diary entries in January 1983. "I'm up to 89 pounds. Steve said I need to reach at least 185 to be medically stable, but Mom keeps saying I'm getting fat. The label keeps booking studio time. Richard keeps pushing for perfection. And I'm so tired of fighting everyone. Maybe they're right. Maybe I should just lose a few pounds and get back to work. 3 weeks later, Karen Carpenter was dead. The anorexia had permanently damaged her heart. Years of starvation had depleted her body of essential nutrients, particularly potassium, leading to cardiac arrhythmia. On the morning of February 4th, 1983, her heart simply gave out. But the most shocking moment was still ahead. The diary's revelation, names and accountability. Karen Carpenter's diary, written during her final months, named specific people she held responsible for encouraging or enabling her eating disorder. While her brother Richard released only carefully selected excerpts, those portions reveal a devastating pattern of exploitation and negligence. She wrote about her mother Agnes, whose constant criticism about Karen's appearance planted the seeds of body dysmorphia. She wrote about A&M Records executives who praised her weight loss and suggested further improvements. She wrote about television producers who requested she wear certain outfits that would look better if you dropped another 5 pounds. She wrote about photographers who asked her to turn at certain angles to minimize her perceived flaws. Everyone had an opinion about my body, Karen wrote. Everyone except the people who should have told me I was dying. Those people, the label, the managers, even some family, stayed silent because sick Karen was still profitable Karen. As long as I could sing, my actual health was secondary. Most damning were Karen's entries about her attempted recovery. She documented phone calls from industry figures pressuring her to resume work. She described meetings where executives suggested she could record while continuing therapy, ignoring medical advice that she needed complete rest. She wrote about the guilt she felt for prioritizing her health over her career, guilt that these same people deliberately cultivated. "They're killing me and calling it encouragement," she wrote in December 1982. "They say they believe in me. They're rooting for my comeback. They can't wait to work with me again. But what they mean is they can't wait for me to be profitable again. My recovery threatens their income. A healthy Karen who sets boundaries, who says no, who prioritizes herself, that's not the Karen they want." And this is the part the studios never wanted revealed. The industry's response, denial and erasure. After Karen Carpenter's death, the music industry moved quickly to control the narrative. A&M Records issued statements emphasizing Karen's talent and legacy, while carefully avoiding any mention of how industry pressure contributed to her eating disorder. Her death was framed as a personal tragedy, a mental health struggle, a cautionary tale about anorexia, but never as an indictment of the system that encouraged and enabled it. When family members and friends began speaking about the pressure Karen faced, industry representatives pushed back. They suggested Karen's problems were primarily psychological, rooted in family dynamics rather than professional demands. They pointed out that plenty of artists worked demanding schedules without developing eating disorders, implying Karen's death was about personal weakness rather than systemic exploitation. "The revisionism started immediately," said Dionne Warwick, a friend of Karen's who spoke publicly about industry pressure. "Suddenly everyone was claiming they'd been worried about her, they'd tried to help, they'd suggested she take time off. But I remember the reality, labels pushing for more albums, managers booking grueling tours, everyone demanding more from a woman who was literally dying in front of them." Most troublingly, the industry learned nothing from Karen's death. In the decades since, countless female artists have spoken about pressure to maintain unrealistic body standards, about eating disorders encouraged or ignored by industry figures, about the message that their appearance matters more than their health. From Demi Lovato to Lady Gaga to Zayn Malik. Artists across genres have described the same toxic culture Karen documented in her diary. The story of Karen Carpenter is not about a tragic individual case. It's about a systemic problem where the entertainment industry treats artists as products to be optimized for profit, where human health is secondary to commercial success, where saying "you look too heavy" to a vulnerable young woman is considered acceptable career advice. Karen Carpenter died weighing 77 pounds, her heart destroyed by years of starvation that began with a single critical comment and was reinforced by an industry that valued her appearance over her life. Her diary stands as testimony not just to her personal struggle, but to the casual cruelty of a business that consumed her completely and learned nothing from her death. "If I don't survive this," Karen wrote in one of her final entries, "I hope someone tells the truth. I hope they don't let the industry pretend they cared. I hope they don't let my death be turned into some cautionary tale about eating disorders without acknowledging who encouraged those disorders in the first place. I was sick, but the industry made me sick, and then they kept me sick because sick Karen still made them money." Today, 40 years after Karen Carpenter's death, we still struggle with the same issues she identified. Female artists still face pressure about their appearance. Eating disorders are still common in the entertainment industry. The machinery that killed Karen Carpenter continues to grind, consuming new generations of talented young people who learn too late that the industry's love is conditional on their willingness to destroy themselves for profit. Karen's voice lives on in recordings that remain timeless. But perhaps her most important legacy is the diary she left behind, the testimony of a woman who understood exactly what was killing her and named the people responsible. The angelic voice of the Carpenters was silenced at 32, but the truth she wrote in her final months still speaks, still accuses, still demands that we ask, how many more Karen Carpenters will die before we acknowledge that the entertainment industry kills artists and calls it show business?